Hello YouTube and Patreon, this is Nathan P. Butler, and this is our monthly project update for the month of August 2019. Yep, a little dark in here. I am, once again, as I often do, having to record fairly late in the evening, once the sun has gone down and there's no sunlight coming into the room, because such is the life of being the father of an almost one-year-old, and someone who works full-time, and someone who's married, and someone who tries to do all this kind of stuff. So I apologize for the crappy lighting. Maybe it fits with Batman in the quasi-shadows and whatnot. But let's take a look at what is going on here. I would say that this has not been a super productive month because it's the first month of the school year. And for teaching online as I do, you would think that that would mean, you know, I'm here. I'm teaching online. It's all good. Which is true. But on top of the normal duties, at the beginning of a school year, we have what are called the Meet the Teacher calls, which means reaching out to every student that we have and at least one parent or guardian of that student. I have 210 students right now. I am 2 weeks into massive marathon calling days that are burning me out every night, and I still have probably a little less than half to go. It's crazy. Mainly because of what I teach. I choose, since I'm the department chair for social studies, to choose to teach primarily economics because I really enjoy the subject. The downside to that is that that's the class where the tests come up the fastest and those calls have to be made before certain tests can be unlocked for students. So it makes for a marathon, ridiculously crazy first couple of weeks, or first 3 or 4 weeks, which is preceded by a week, week and a half of tons and tons of meetings. So, aside from brief bursts of activity, there's not a lot of time here at the beginning of a school year. I'm hoping that will start to ease off here by the time of the next update because we'll be getting out of August and into September here. So, we shall see. First, before we look at any specific new releases and that sort of thing, let me thank all those who are backers over on Patreon. Again, that is patreon.com/Nathan P. Butler. That $1 tier, that is the Travelers Through the Butlerniverse, includes those folks who are going to get those thanks at the end of this episode and get the thanks on the special page in the next edition of a Saga on Home Video, whenever that may be, probably within the next year, year and a half, once Rise of Skywalker has taken its course through home video. That tier includes Ben P. Stein, Martin Dahl, Austin Pierce, and S.W. Chris. Then we have sort of the mid-level tier, which is the $5 tier, which is the denizens of the Butlerniverse. These are the folks that not only get what the first tier get, they also get access to those audio commentaries, at least 2 per month. In this case, most of them being so far for the Clone Wars, though there are a couple for Forces of Destiny. We have just reached the point where I have finished recording. Well, you know what? I'll get to that in a minute. It's a big milestone for some recording there. But suffice to say, for the denizens of the Butlerniverse, this is our biggest group. This includes Jason Hunt, Bobby Craig, Robert Medina, Chris Morgan, Sam Howard, Stephen M., Joey Zitzman, Jeff Ellis, Chris Lewis, Jeremiah Mustard, and Nathan W. Mortimer. Then we, of course, have the nobility of the Butlerniverse. They get what all the other tiers get, but they also get access to that exclusive monthly Q&A. There are 5 nobility of the Butlerniverse right now. That is Andrew Bettis, Benjamin Handelman, Ennis, Jonathan Confer, and Brian Snook. So, thank you to all of you who are patrons over there. If you want to stop by, check it out. Again, it is patreon.com/Nathan P. Butler. And that is where we've seen some recent releases. Patreon has the benefit of the fact that because there's a monetary aspect to it, there's a much heavier responsibility on my part to make sure that I'm meeting the responsibility of what I've said is going to be provided from a month-to-month basis. The exclusive Q&A for the nobility of the Butlerniverse, typically within the first half of the month. The last one was a little bit later because of my laryngitis that I was dealing with. Then we, of course, have at least 2 commentaries, typically on the 1st and 15th of the month, and so on until we get to this point late in the month where sometime in the last week to week and a half, we have our project update, which is on YouTube and on Patreon, but includes those Patreon credits. So the last of these updates was posted on July 28th of 2019. So since then, just on Patreon, we've seen the release of the audio commentary for Corruption, the episode of the Clone Wars, which of course was also followed by, on August 15th, the release of the commentary for The Academy. That's that quasi 2-part, almost 3-part, if you count Assassin that comes next, arc that brings us back to Mandalore. And then on August 5th, we had the 20th of the Nobility of the Butlerniverse Q&A episodes released as well. For what it's worth, for those who are curious, that milestone I was mentioning, kind of teasing a second ago by accident, that is actually the fact that finally, yes, I have managed to actually get all the commentaries for the Clone Wars recorded all the way up through the time jump. So the next episode I get to record for those commentaries is going to be the one after the time jump, where Ahsoka is a little bit older, where the continuity starts to be clearer because the chronology is less screwed up, and basically the series takes a much stronger turn, at least in my opinion. So what do we have? On September 1st coming up, we will have the episode for Assassin, again, which is kind of part of the arc with corruption in the Academy, but not really, but it certainly is given that feel. Then, of course, on September 15th, we'll have the one for ARC Troopers, which is another of those Domino Squad type episodes. October 1st, Sphere of Influence is already recorded and scheduled. October 15th will be Evil Plans. November 1st, Hostage Crisis, and then November 15th, Hunt for Zero. Yes, I've got the commentaries recorded at this point through November 15th. So I'm hoping that will give me the leeway at some point, if there's time, if the baby lets me, to maybe get back into those other two Forces of Destiny commentaries that I haven't done yet, which would finally round out and finish Forces of Destiny. We shall see. Again, if you are a member of the nobility of the Butlerniverse, make sure you get any questions in before the end of August if you want your question in that September exclusive Q&A, and then in September if you want it for October, and so on, and so on, and so on. And again, if you are someone who wants to jump on there, but you want to jump on there maybe for just 1 month, go for it. Whatever tier you jump into, you get access to all the stuff for that tier all the way back to the beginning. So it's definitely a growing value proposition, as I think I've said before, and you may have just heard him squealing in the other room. Yeah, my wife's watching him right now, but yeah, he's in the squealing phase. Like, I can't talk yet, but by God, I know how to make a shitload of noise, and I'm gonna do it as often as I can, usually when Daddy's on the phone for work. As far as podcasts go, I haven't had a chance to record with Michael Morris recently for Cloud City Casino. It's just been trouble getting our schedules to align, especially given that it's the beginning of the school year, but hopefully as things ease off, maybe in the next month or so, we'll finally be able to record again. As for Star Wars Beyond the Films with me and Mark Hurleman, we did get a chance to record, and what we recorded was not what we intended to record. We intended to record the Alphabet Squadron episode as our next episode. Instead, we have pushed that back by an episode and taken a suggestion from one of our listeners to do an episode that basically sort of takes stock of where things stand with Star Wars storytelling 5 years now after the reboot. That episode has been recorded. It has not been edited yet. Again, I need time to actually do that. But it's recorded. I'm hoping to be able to start getting to it sometime here within the next week or so. So hopefully, if not at the end of August, then at the beginning of September, you'll be able to catch that episode of Star Wars Beyond the Films. Both of those podcasts, of course, are on StarWarsReport.com. In the meantime, I did post a non-spoiler review over at StarWarsReport.com under the Star Wars Beyond the Films section for A Crash of Fate, one of the Galaxy's Edge tie-in novels, this one from Disney Lucasfilm Press. Pretty soon I'll be doing a text review for Thrawn Treason, and then I need to actually start reading Black Spire, which is still sitting there waiting for me to read. No way I get it read by Tuesday, I think it is, when it actually comes out. Of course, YouTube is where you'll find most of the stuff I'm able to actually get recorded and released. Typically, whenever I get a chance to record, it's either late at night, so it's a game thing where I'm pointing the camera down at a table so I can be in my pajamas, and the opposite possibility would be if I get a chance to really just record a ton of stuff all at once in the office here. And both of those actually happened a little bit here in the recent past, since the last time you guys got one of these update episodes. So, to start out with, the first thing released post-update was when I finally got the video edited for the Siege Storm Siege Mode art book from Awaken Realms. It's basically the art book that goes with the game. I'd already done a Kickstarter content overview for the game. Then the art book finally came in, did a quick video on that. We then looked at an item from a Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars game we hadn't seen in a while, Star Wars Armada. And that was that bad boy up there that you could probably just barely see the fins from the fins that hold it up. That is the Super Star Destroyer expansion pack, that $200 freaking expansion pack that was about $160 where I wound up buying it. But boy, is that a glorious, as Mark would say, beautiful model. And it's going to make for some pretty hectic gameplay, I think, in Armada. We also then took a look at the X-Wing Miniatures game movement tools, the deluxe movement tools and range ruler, the plastic ones, because I finally got a replacement for the ones I had received that were broken. So we took a look at those. That rounded out the most recent wave of X-Wing products to be released. And then we dove into From the Star Wars Home Video Library. So you know, remember I had a stack of stuff back here, just growing and growing and growing. Well, I cleared out most of it. I sat down one day, and thank goodness, I think it was like August 4th. He was being good, my wife was taking care of him, they were in the other room with my father-in-law after we had just gone out to eat, and sure enough, because I was able to record in rapid succession, I was able to record, I want to say 20 or almost 20 episodes of From the Star Wars Home Video Library all in one shot. Haven't had a chance to edit most of them, but at least they're sitting there ready to go, ready to be edited and uploaded, which I'm hoping to be able to start doing more of either this week or next week. So the ones that have been able to be released so far from that giant batch of me wearing the Daddy Shark shirt, we have number 207, which is yet another Spaceballs DVD. We have number 208, which is a Turkish VCD of The Phantom Menace. And then in number 209, we had the Malaysian Revenge of the Sith VCD that we took a look at. But that was all from that batch to actually get out so far. There is, of course, quite a few more coming. We also took a look at the last two Legion products for Star Wars Legion that we'll be taking a look at all on the channel, with the exception of the playmats that are eventually going to arrive because I can use them for other things. Those were the Rebel Veterans and Tauntaun Rider expansions. Again, that's just a game that's more expensive than I'm willing to pay when, A, I hate putting the miniatures together. I absolutely loathe that process because I don't paint them, and typically I'm not playing the game. So for something that winds up basically just being something sitting in a collection in a closet or sitting on display, just because they're cool-looking minis, the price just isn't justified for that sort of thing. Your mileage will vary. It depends on how much you actually play the stinking game and what you're going to do with them. We then took a quick look on August 19th at another item tying into Nemesis from Awakened Realms. Now, Nemesis has Wave 2 of its content coming here in the next couple of months, so hopefully soon we'll be looking at Wave 2 with the Carnomorphs and the Void Seeders and the Terrain expansion, all that kind of stuff in one of those Kickstarter overview videos to wrap things up for Nemesis. But in the interim, there was a special promo pack called the Crawl Deck that was part of the Dice Tower 2019 fundraising Kickstarter, which hasn't delivered yet, which was also put on sale by Dice Tower because it's exclusive to Dice Tower, but not necessarily exclusive to that campaign at Gen Con this year. And I was able to get a copy of the deck from Gen Con, so that I'll now have a backup copy, basically, once the Kickstarter finally delivers. But I was able to take a look at that Crawl Deck, these 10 crazy cards that screw with you if you try to use the technical quarters, but let you use them at all if you're not the mechanic in Nemesis. So we took a look at that set of 10 cards in detail. And speaking of games we've looked at before, the very last video was actually released the same day I'm recording this, which is August 25th, and that is another look at the Dresden Files cooperative card game, except in that case, we took a look at what the Kickstarter stretch goals were, the same way we would for one of our Kickstarter videos, because that wasn't how I framed the Dresden Files videos previously. And we took a look at the Broken Token wooden organizer that goes inside the box for those who are interested in Broken Token or wonder if it's worth the money to pick up a Broken Token organizer. At present, by the way, besides all those From the Star Wars Home Video Library videos that are recorded that need to be edited, along with the Star Wars Beyond the Films episode that's recorded and needs to be edited, I also have a video on the Proving Grounds game. It's a solo game, the beginning of the Solo Hero series from Renegade, that I did a video on. This recorded but needs to be edited. You're kind of sensing a theme here. Meanwhile, big news for the month, which I probably should have led with, but you know, I try to do these in the same order each time, or pretty close to the same order, so it's easy to spot what you're looking for, is that, as I mentioned previously, my time travel with telepaths sci-fi thriller novel Greater Good, that was originally self-published in 2009 and then professionally published in 2012 through Grail Quest Books, has received a new edition. And this new edition is slightly revised in terms of the text to get rid of certain, let's use a fakey name as opposed to a real-world name type of things, to kind of revert to the real-world names. The previous publisher was a little bit concerned about, like using the name of a real airport in a book and that sort of thing. Slightly revised text for that, and a new edition put out by Arcbeetle Press, which is Jim Wilder's publishing imprint. And inside the new printing is also a bonus story. My short novella Echoes, which is sort of a mystery thriller, sort of a detective story, in a sense, with a twist, that is something I self-published back in 2006 that never had a professional publishing or publication, but professional edition. That has been fully revised to make more sense within the context of 2019 as opposed to 2006, and that is included there as a bonus story. So the new book is this. It says Greater Good and Echoes by Nathan P. Butler. Yes, that's me. Okay. So if you're curious about Greater Good and Echoes, we have the physical copy here. Now, because of the size, right, physical size in general, the actual physical copy runs, I want to say, $17.99 at this point, give or take. So more than a smaller paperback, but less expensive than a hardback. So we tried to go with something that was sort of a trade formatted paperback here. But if you're looking for an ebook version for your Kindle, you can find both of these on Amazon. Then go and check out the ebook version, which is only $3.99. Or if you got Kindle Unlimited, it's a free read. Good stuff. For those who are curious, the new description on the back reads, Carla Vanderval has spent most of her time in the FBI avoiding murder cases, but now one has dropped right in her lap. But this is no ordinary murder. A man named Cray Ellis claims the killer has come from the future, and he's come back in time to stop him, changing the course of history forever. Murder, mystery, and time travel collide as the unlikely pair try to stop a killer who believes he's acting in the greater good. Featuring Nathan P. Butler's novella Echoes in print for the first time in a decade. And when it says Nathan P. Butler's, it has the, in parentheses, Star Wars Tales, 10,000 Dawns. Right, 10,000 Dawns is the sci-fi franchise that Jim actually launched, which has a couple of my stories in its most recent outing. So again, Greater Good and Echoes. If you're looking for this on Amazon, do the search with the full, it's Greater Good and Echoes. That'll be the full title. That way you'll know that you're going to get this one. There are still some third-party sellers that seem to be selling the previous edition from 2012 at this point. You definitely want to make sure you get this one because you get the value proposition of Echoes packed inside, which is the only way you're going to get Echoes these days. All of the old self-published copies have left circulation at this point. So if you're looking for that one, this is the one to get. Plus, the text reads better now. I'm a better writer than I was in 2006 now, or at least I'd like to think so. And finally, as sort of a pet project update, you may recall that recently I mentioned that I was in the process of trying to get more space for my Star Wars home video collection, and that part of that had been involving moving a bunch of my old Star Wars books to basically tubs and whatnot, but I didn't like the idea of that because why have a collection if it's not on display? And I don't really need a reference library anymore with no Star Wars Timeline Gold to work on, etc., etc., etc. So while keeping some of the Star Wars Legends content that I really wanted to hang on to and keeping the bulk of the Star Wars canon content, I was selling off a huge amount, most of my Legends collection, my Star Wars Legends collection. I'm happy to say that at this point, everything I was trying to get out the door, barring, I think, one thing that I'm waiting to get a payment on and two things that are packed up and ready to mail, everything that I was selling is now out the door. Which is nice because now I've got this massive amount, well, not massive, but a bigger amount of space to be able to spread out the home video collection, to be able to let it grow and really kind of continue building what my current passion is. Again, a lot of the fun for me on collecting is the chase and finding new stuff, but I'd gotten to the point, especially with Star Wars Legends, that I had the stuff. What was there left to hunt down unless it was just finding signed copies to replace previously existing copies or something like that, which I did keep all of, right? I kept all the signed stuff, obviously, and Star Wars Legacy and a few other things along the way. But yeah, so my thanks to those of you who picked up some of the stuff from that collection because that certainly has helped me from a space standpoint. I'm very glad to see it go to good homes, so to speak, and now glad to be able to continue expanding that Star Wars home video collection so I can record more episodes that maybe someday I'll actually get to edit and release. But I digress. In the process, though, by the way, opening up that space did let me go through all these shelves here that are slightly reorganized before I start figuring out how I'm going to spread it out to get new counts on the Star Wars home video collection. This came up in one of those mini Q&As at one point, where basically somebody asked me how many copies I had of things in a collection. So I figured I would do that again. Now, I think this is accurate. I feel like I may have missed a thing or two along the way, but assuming this is accurate, then understand that what I'm about to tell you numerically here for the home video collection is how many individual copies I have of a film that is from a different release or an individual release. So let's take 2006, for example. So in 2006, the original trilogy was released again on DVD, except this time it was a 2-disc set where the first disc was the DVD copy, the same as in 2004 and 2005. The second disc was basically the supposedly unaltered version that was based on the definitive collection masters from '93, except for the opening of A New Hope that was tweaked a little bit, right? So you could have that release from Best Buy in the collector's tin. You could have those releases in the pack with the comics. You can have the releases that have the postcards with the concept art in them, and so on and so on and so on. Those, to me, are all different releases, okay? Also, in my counting, if we had a copy of a film, like in 2006, with 2 or more, as opposed to just 1 copy of the film inside that package in physical form, I considered those as multiple copies. So for instance, a 2006 DVD copy of A New Hope counts as 2, because you got a copy of the film on the DVD disc and a copy of the film on the unaltered bonus disc, etc., etc. Something like the really awesome solo release that came out from South Korea, the highest end one, that's going to mean 4K and Blu-ray 3D, 3 copies in one release. Because, again, different formats within that release. So, assuming that we can use those rules when pinning this down and not otherwise repeat a release, right? Unless there was something to actually differentiate a release from another release, I did not count them again. So, for instance, I had a copy of Rogue One on Blu-ray with the DVD copy that was just the regular release. But I also had a copy of that from getting the lithographs from the Disney store. But those are the exact same release, just with the different items separate from it. I wouldn't count one of those. So anyway, drum roll please, bubba-da-bubba-da-bum. We have 2 copies only of Darth Maul Returns, which is the feature film length version of taking the 4 original Darth Maul episodes from the Clone Wars series and just mushing them together. Don't know why I almost said Attack of the Clones. Probably got it on the brain because I'm seeing the acronym here. And also 2 copies of Droids, the Treasure of the Hidden Planet, and Ewoks, Tales from the Indoor Woods, which are both similar to Darth Maul Returns, bastardizations, merging of 4 episodes of those series into one feature-length film. Then I have 3 copies only of The Pirates and the Prince, which is another of those merged copies, except this time from Droids. And then 4 copies of The Haunted Village. You might say, well, why is it 4 of those and 3 of the other? Because I've got a screener of Haunted Village. Then continuing upward from there, we have 8 copies of the Clone Wars film, 8 copies of Battle for Endor, 9 copies of Caravan of Courage. Why are they not even? Because I have a VHD from Japan of Caravan of Courage, but not of Battle for Endor. Then continuing up from there, 27 copies of Revenge of the Sith, 29 copies of Attack of the Clones, 33 copies of Solo, 36 copies of The Phantom Menace, 41 copies of Rogue One, 42 copies of The Last Jedi, which, by the way, ties the number of copies I have of friggin' Spaceballs at this point. God, they re-released that film a lot over the years. At least with The Last Jedi, it was all these retailer exclusives that helped build up that number, as with some of the other ones. Then we have 53 copies of The Force Awakens, and that leaves the original trilogy, with 73 copies of Return of the Jedi, 75 of The Empire Strikes Back, and 92 copies of A New Hope. That's a lot. That doesn't even count the ones that are actual duplicates. I know some folks had asked me for an updated accounting of that, and since we're not doing the mini Q&As right now, because it's just not enough time to do it with all the other stuff to get knocked out, I figured I'd go ahead and add it here to the monthly update. So, with that, again, thank you very much for checking out the Patreon, checking out the YouTube channel, checking out the podcast when there are episodes, checking out the book, hopefully. and so on and so on. I really appreciate all of your support, folks. For now, though, I'm going to head out of here. I will catch you in a month. Thanks.